What's up YouTube, and welcome back to another Procreate tutorial. Today we're going to go for a bit more of a kind of darker, moodier theme with this sort of sunrise design, nice misty morning. Now as always, you're going to want to go ahead and grab all of the requirements for today's design, and the only things you need is the canvas size as well as the palette. Both are available over my Patreon, completely free for you if you are following along with this YouTube tutorial. So use the link in the description down below, it takes you to my Patreon. There's multiple ways you can grab those resources, but once you've got the palette and the canvas size, you're good to go. Everything else is built into Procreate. As always, make sure to check out my Patreon while you're over there, because that's where I post 3 exclusive tutorials every single month. And there's a catalogue now over there of over 150 exclusive tutorials. So once you're finished with today's design, make sure to tag me in it. And with all that said, let's get started. So to get started, we're going to go up to our actions. As always, we're going to go to our canvas tab and add a drawing guide. Let's edit that drawing guide and change the grid size to 500, which is a quarter of our canvas size, and hit done, and hit done again. So what we're going to do is we're just going to block in some basics. Let's first of all go to our layers and go to our background color. Just change it to the color in the bottom right of the palette and hit done. Then on your empty layer, go to your colors. It doesn't matter what your color is. So you can just grab gray, for instance, in the middle of the disc there on the left. Go to your selection tool. Use rectangle and tap on color fill to turn it on, and you want to go ahead and create a box roughly around about a third up at the bottom of your screen, and then tap on your selection tool when you're done. Let's then go to our layers, create a new layer, drag it underneath what is your water, and you can rename that block if you want to and call it water. Just keep things nice and organized. And your empty layer here that you just created, go to your colors. Top of the second column from the right now, and you want your brush to be changed to the option of drawing and the evolve brush. Now the evolve brush is set to 2% at the current stage, and we're going to start off up here, and we're going to just press with varying amounts of pressure and a little bit of kind of wiggle to it to create kind of the top edge of a forest, and that's going to run down to like around about say here, and then from there I just want to let go and just create like a less kind of like bouncy kind of line, and just have a line running like so. You should be able to drag and drop your color into the bottom half of the canvas. Now if you need to, hold down on your eraser. That changes the brush to the one you were just using, and I can just go ahead and, for instance, just try and sort of trim that down maybe a tiny bit, just to get a little bit more of a drop in there. From there, let's add in some like clouds and sort of atmosphere to this. So we'll go ahead and create a new layer. We'll go to our colors and grab the middle of the second column from the right. Brush wants to be airbrushing and the soft brush just to start with. Size around about sort of, I reckon around about sort of 11% to get us started. And just a wiggle of a line like through here. So that's your mist, and you can go all the way to the bottom if you really want to. It's not necessary to do so. You can run that up into the bottom, top left up here, run it across, and then just bring your brush size down to like a 4%, wiggle it through to create some random patches. Not too many though, just like one, just a little bit different to the rest. Then we'll go to our brushes again. We will change it to the option of elements and clouds. I've got the opacity set to 41%. Size will probably stick around about the 10% range. Now, by the way, if I ever go too fast in these tutorials, you can always slow me down in the YouTube player. So, change that as you need to. Tap on the video, go to settings, and slow me down. I'm just going to make that a bit bigger, 14, just so I can just pack in some clouds in here that have got a little bit more shaping to them, basically, and you get that kind of patchiness to it as well. And I want that to kind of run up and kind of really take over. So I'm going to bring the opacity up to like a 70% now, so I can really kind of patch it in. There we go. And then we've got some nice cloud, and I want some up in that top left hand side as well. So a little something like this. You've got loads and loads of texture. You can tap away and a few little taps here and there just to add in some more if needs be. Now what we'll do is, because it's quite far away, we'll go to our Gaussian blur, so adjustments and Gaussian blur, and swipe from left to right, just kind of blur that out maybe like 4%, and then tap on your adjustments when you're done. That'll just feather that out a bit more. And while we're blurring things, let's go down to the layer below, go to your adjustments, Gaussian blur, and that's the main shape now, and then swipe from left to right, and we want to do a 5% Gaussian blur as well. And then to save on your layers, you can pinch these two together if you like. Let's then start working on the sky. So we'll create a new layer and drag it underneath those hills. We'll go to our colors, and we will grab this color here, top right of the palette. It's very close to the color of the actual hills. Go to your brush and airbrushing and the soft brush. If you struggle with pressure sensitivity, you may need to lower your opacity down of your brush, but you want something fairly large size, maybe 20 to to 15 to 20%, something like that. A little wiggle just in behind the hills, but ultimately just kind of darkening up a little bit like this. There we go. Leaving that kind of bluish tone towards the top edge. So it's very, very subtle on camera, and I'm hoping the colors are coming across correctly. If they look a little bit different on your screen to the actual video, don't worry, it's just because the camera's picking up the colors in a slightly different way. I'll try my best to fix it in editing anyway, but just stick with it as you currently are. Then we're going to go ahead and create another new layer. Now we're going to introduce the yellow tone. So we're going to go to our colors and grab the yellow in the middle of the far right column. And similar fashion, slightly larger brush size, about 21%. You're going to sort of bring in some color from behind the horizon. It's almost like a sunrise, but we've got a lot of, haze and whatnot in the air. Now I'm going to wiggle it a little bit higher than I need to. I want to cover up a little bit higher in the sky. So a little something like this. Then what we're going to do is we're going to go to our colors, a layer, tap on it and add a mask to it. Now your color will have set itself to black because you're on the mask, and just tap on the mask if you haven't. Then go to your brush. You can then go back into the option of elements and clouds. Let's bring the opacity down just to start with, like 50%. Size, you can fluctuate it. I've got it set to about 10 to start. In fact, we could probably go a bit bigger at the top, because what we're going to do now is we're going to crop into the clouds, and especially the yellow part, to reveal those darker tones underneath. And that will you want to kind of focus your lighting a bit here. So you kind of want to just bring in like a line across your sky. I'm going to fluctuate the size 13% a little bit, maybe go a bit smaller. Let's go down to that 6% range. Bring that in across the sky, bring that one in, and just like, especially up in the top corners, make sure you add in some darker tone. Let that dark tone come back through. And I really am going to start like really hacking away into this kind of space and create clouds. So my pressure's nice and light just to start. I can get basic shapes in here and just really take my time to build up that kind of effect. You can go a bit smaller with your brush size where you feel is necessary, like a 3% on the rear of your clouds, so like the top edge. So you can just chuck in some more dark tone in here. There we go, a little bit in here too. And just keep going. Fluctuate your brush size, 6%. I'm going to bring the opacity up to about 70 just so I can be a bit quicker with the application, because it's not mandatory really to get it looking any kind of way. You're just trying to hack away into the clouds here and the lighting, more importantly. I'm going to do the same just to bring in some from below here. So I'm going to just undo that last one. Slightly larger brush size just towards the edges so I can bring that color in a little bit quicker. 12%, just little patches, and then maybe go down to that 6% marker I've got and just really get back in here, especially towards the top, get that kind of streaky line effect going on. Over here, don't be afraid to really just draw in some very big dark clouds. That's what we want really, especially here behind your hillside. You want that to kind of also be able to kind of blur between. And then again, go 3% and just draw in some like really small ones in the distance, perhaps, just little sort of specks and break-offs of some clouds in the distance, some little horizontal lines here and there. I'm going to go 6%, and everybody's is going to look different. So please don't worry if yours looks different to mine. Everybody's is going to look different. That's always the best thing to see when you tag me in your finished creations on like Instagram and Facebook. It's great to see what you guys come up with that's a little bit different. And most of the time you do a better job than I do. So keep tagging me in your finished creations. I really mean that. Let's keep going. So I think now what I'll do is with 6%, I'm just going to try and make sure I get rid of, and a high opacity, I'm going to make sure I get rid of all of the kind of lighting just around the edges and focus that more towards that sort of central area. A little bit like that. And then maybe with a 14, 17%, just give it one large big coat over the top edges, just to really make sure the large cloud sits towards the top. Then what we'll do is we'll go ahead and go to our layer, swipe it to the left and duplicate it, then change the blend mode of the top one. So make sure you're on the top one and change the blend mode from normal to add. Now don't worry, of course it's going to go super white at this stage. What we're going to try and do is focus that white lighting into here, but let some of the yellow sit towards the top. So we'll stay on the mask for the add layer, so make sure you're on the mask, and then just get rid of it around the edges and just kind of, you leave random patches of light, that's fine, I don't mind that, but you're trying to kind of just blend out that kind of real brightish spot here and leave a little bit of that yellow to come through. And again, if you have some white patches towards the top, it doesn't look awful, it's quite nice. I'm going to bring the opacity down to like 64 just so I can kind of do a better job of kind of fading that out a little bit. Let the yellows kind of just sit underneath the clouds. Now from there, there's another item we need to add, and that's down here, and that's going to be another set of trees. So we're done with the background area. what I recommend you do is just keep things nice and tidy. Just go ahead and swipe from left to right on all of these items, including the hills, and group it together and just call it BG. Just to keep things nice and organized. In your BG group at the top, tap on the layer and create a new layer. Go to your colors. You want to go ahead and grab this color here. Is the top of the third column from the right. Now your brush wants to be set to the option of the leatherwood brush, which is under artistic and leatherwood. Now, if I go ahead and let's tap on the leatherwood, if you go to color dynamics, you can see here I've changed a few of the settings. So make sure you change your settings here to match up to mine. So feel free to pause at this stage. It's the best thing to do at this point. And then also just triple check when you're done. Your stabilization is none, and you're good to go. If you hit done. Now, by the way, when you finish today's tutorial, just swipe the leatherwood to the left and reset it. That'll set it back to normal. Now, what we've done is we've added in some nice color hues in here. So if I go down to 1% brush size, we're going to draw in some hills in the distance. And they're going to go ahead and run just a tiny bit past halfway. And then let's just draw in like a big bank all the way across. I'm going to let go, and then I'm going to just go ahead and just draw in a line as best I can along the horizon and drag and drop the color in. And then just give it like a little wobble over the top of it, you know, just a few, because if you can take a look at the brush, it's adding in lots of different hues. You've got greens, blues, bit of purple in there as well. It's perfect for what we're going to use it for. Now we're going to go ahead and draw in some trees, and they just need to be as simple, okay, as like a straight line down, and just feel free to just do lines all over the place just to get your kind of structure of your forest all the way down. And then I'm just going to basically put in like a really teeny tiny one on the edge down here, and then quite quickly get into some much larger trees that sort of sit quite close to us, and then vary the sizes, make some nice and tall, make some, you know, a little bit shorter here and there. It is a forest and a woodland, not too tall, mind you. You know, just take a look at my grid as always. That's why we do it. You know, my grid there allows you to see what sort of scale I'm going to. So we'll just keep doing this. Draw in some straight lines here and there. You could create one tree and then duplicate it. It's not really my style all of the time, because that's as simple as it needs to be. And all I want to do is just press with a little bit of pressure, and the higher the pressure towards the bottom, just to try and really chunk it out and go all the way down and into the ground. And then just go back up your tree and just give it a few wiggles. Horizontal motion will look great with this leatherwood brush. Just go along the tree, up and down it. Couple more off to the side. So you're basically creating like lots of Christmas trees, but just create gaps in between them and they'll look great. Like this is going to get slightly blurred as well. It is just background content. So feel free just to, you know, really keep it nice and simple. Don't overthink it, you know, run it down there. This one here, maybe I'll keep this one like a little bit skinnier at the top just to do something different with it, but just run it all the way down. Now, typically, to be honest with you, on YouTube, I don't tend to do these kind of more almost dullish style landscapes because they don't do all that well. But if you like these kind of more moody style effects, I have posted some more of this style, and I tend to do that more so on my Patreon. Links in the description down below, of course. By the way, if you're ever interested in checking out my Patreon, you can go to my website and see all of the tutorial designs before you join. That way you know if the content is good for you or not. And if you like what you see, it's quite there's lots of different tiers, so you can pick and choose what fits your budget. And I also created a new tier somewhat recently where you can just get access to the latest one. So if you're constantly doing my tutorials, and I really appreciate it if you are, then you can just get access to the latest Patreon tutorial, and that's the cheapest out of all of my tiers at the time of like making this video. So yeah, check it out. But yeah, there's sometimes more moody stuff over there, a little bit more this kind of misty, less kind of colorful and eye-catching, which is more popular on YouTube than it is the kind of moody styles. Again, I'm going to zoom all the way out, just triple check what my landscape's looking like. I'm going to run this up and down, just continue just to fill it in. You see how simple I'm trying to keep it. And then if I need to, I can purposely, you know, get in there and do some of the trees and add in some more detail. You know, I could go all the way down to my smallest size brush where possible, just for some of the distant tree element there. Zoom all the way out. Gaps are fun, but gaps are good. You know, ideally though, want to kind of bulk out the hillside, but if you've got some gaps in your trees, it still will look nice. Now what we're going to do is we're just going to tap on this layer and alpha lock it, so we can't paint outside of it. and then go to your brush and switch it to airbrushing in the soft brush. Set your size to like 10% and just give it like a bit of a blanket throughout the shape. I want to leave some of those greens and purples and blues in the trees, but more so towards the top. The bottom, I kind of want to leave it a bit more sort of standard in terms of the color. Now let's add some mist to this as well. So let's create a new layer in front of it. Let's go to our colors and we're going to grab this color here, middle of the second column from the right. You can keep your soft airbrush about 7% to start with. Wiggle it along kind of the base. Again, wiggle it because then you get some nice random heights to it. Bring your brush size down, maybe like 4%. Run in between some trees, you know, like make your brush really thin and kind of try and direct some of the mist like in between some of the trees if you want to. Just so it's kind of trickling down the hillside. It'll add in a little bit more character. A little something like this, just like a blanket, especially towards the bottom. Just keep it nice and wobbly, and a little bit more pressure will look nice. And then go to your brush and go to, what was it? It was organic. So it's under elements, sorry, clouds. 6% brush size. Bring the opacity down to like 50 and just tap your way through there just to maybe add in some like more defined shaping to some elements if you want to. And feel free to really chuck in some color, you know, go higher in your trees if you want to. You know, it's meant to be a really, really, really thick, misty morning. Running that along kind of the line there. A lot of this is going to get covered up, but just a little bit of something will look really nice. And then I'm going to go a bit lower with the opacity, about 25% on the opacity, and just give it a couple of taps just to take out and knock down a few of those trees in terms of brightness. So like I'm making them a little bit more faint by just tapping and just knocking a few of them back a little bit in the woodland. It will create some more depth as well. Now from there, we can now start to get rid of this grey box by creating the reflection. So what we'll do is we'll just simply turn off our water layer here at the very top and collapse the BG group down. If you tap away, swipe down with 3 fingers and go copy all, tap on copy all, then go ahead and swipe down with 3 fingers again and go to paste. Go to your layers now and you'll see this new inserted image. Just drag it above your water block and turn it back on. And then tap on this inserted image, which is clipped to your water. So tap on it and clip it. Go to your cursor, flip it vertically. And then all you want to do is just line the bottom of the water there, of course, like so. And you get a lovely reflection. It already looks quite pretty. Go to freeform and you can flatten it down a little bit in terms of height. But again, you're just trying to make sure the edge of those trees in the distance are kind of aligned. So you've got something a little bit like this. I'm just going to make it a bit taller and just try and align it like that. Tap on my cursor when I'm done. Got a lovely reflection. Then what we want to do is we want to go to our adjustments. Let's go to Gaussian blur. And let's swipe from left to right, just blurring out your reflection a little bit, giving it a little bit of a softer look because these elements are so far back. I've gone to around about 6 to 7% there. I think that looks pretty good. You could probably do a little bit more or less, but I'm going to leave it there. And then I'm going to go to the layer, tap on it, and use the drawing assist. If I then go to my smudge tool and change it to water and the wash brush, maximum opacity size around about 2%, because it is now drawing assisted, I can only smudge horizontally or vertically, i.e. like the grid. So now I can just get through here. I can start pushing a lot of those grays across that dark reflection. I can break down that reflection as much or as little as I like. You can press down with your pen to get a slightly different size. By all means, change the size as well of your brush. You know, just smudge them out. We are going to end up with some land over here anyway, but it's more in this area. I want you to do as much focus as you can and give it a little bit more time because we can push these lovely light rays across our water. We can push some of these lovely blue tones across the water as well at the bottom here. Find a light spot and push it over the dark. Find the dark spot, push it over the light, you know, bring that darkness across and vice versa. Just creating lovely ripples. When you end up with an area like this where it's primarily just all the same color, you won't see any ripple change because you're not pushing a dark tone over a light tone, etc. So you won't see too much of a change. So just take your time to get into here, just kind of blurring it out, giving it a lovely little look to the water, and it already looks very peaceful. Let's go ahead and carry on though. Let's add in some new land on the left. So we're going to go ahead and you can merge those two layers together, your water. So your water is now just one block. If you create a new layer just in front of your water, we're going to go to our colors and we are going to grab this color here, top of the third column. Brush wants to go back to the option of artistic and we want the leather wood again. I've got multiple versions of many different brushes. So we've got the leather wood again. Size should be set to about 2% now, maximum opacity. And you want to zoom in And we want to go ahead and create a bit of land that's a bit lower than our horizon. So you want to kind of see where your land ends over there and kind of just start. I'm going to go down to 1% just so I can make a very thin line, go all the way across, pop one finger on the screen so I can get a nice straight line. And then from there, I can just tidy that up. I could go all the way down to a 1% as well if I really wanted to. So I'm going to have a trickle of land. It's very, very slow and flat, like so. And then out of nowhere, it's going to just sort of jump up. Now I want to kind of bring that a little bit more across. I want that kind of a bit more gradual than that. And then it's going to go boom, straight up. And that's going to be a little waterfall in the distance. So I'm just going to go ahead and kind of create the top edge of like a flat plane of land here. A little bit of a decline to it though, just so that you can see evidently almost like where the water would run to. And I'm just going to colour in on the inside. We can tidy it up in a second. It's just trying to create that outline effect just to start with. And then from there, you kind of want to run a line up to around about, say, here from that point. So you just want to create like a big foresty kind of shape, which we'll do in a minute, of course. Then if you've not got any gaps, you should be able to drag and drop the colour in. If it spills out, just drag it to the left and it may or may not hold. Even with a 0% threshold, it's not holding. So I need to get back through here. And I'll just simply run back through, make it nice and chunky, drag the color back in and then drag it to the right. There we go. And just fill that in. And then that line there just still needs to be a bit more gradual than that. So you've got your bulky land in. You can then go ahead and start to draw in some trees. So I've got like 1% brush size selected. So I'm going to leave my waterfall area here. And then from there, I'm going to go ahead and just draw in like a bit of a loose tree that's like leaning outwards ever so slightly. And then we'll go ahead and draw in a few trees that are going to be kind of leaning a tiny bit more. And then let's then straighten up a few like here, for example. Let's draw in another one there. And then I want one all the way up here. So I'm trying to sort of plan out my forest first. So bigger tree back there. And then from there, it's just a matter of adding in some slightly smaller trees. So you're just drawing in the trunks at this point. And then we can fill in the gaps in a minute. So what I'll do is I'll leave it like that for a minute. And then all I want to do is just kind of tap and push with some pressure in that direction to create the trick. That's it. So I'm pushing, letting the leatherwood just scatter. As it goes, it will just fill out the tree. You can chunk out the base of it if you want to and go all the way down because we don't know where this tree necessarily starts. And that's fine. That's lovely. In fact, you can have your tree just kind of lean outwards like that. Maybe give it like a bit more of a twist to some of them. You can go down to a teeny tiny 1% and just extend the top if you really want to. And again, I've got 1% selected. I'm just pushing in the direction I want those little branches to kind of twist and push out. And then again, as it scatters, you basically fill out the branch. Like you just fill it all in, go all the way to the bottom. If you leave any big gaps, just go ahead and like draw in some bushes or something. And then maybe draw in like another tree. Right, but it's much, much smaller in comparison just to kind of fill it out a little bit more. You can go a little bit higher maybe than that one. Lovely, that just fills that out a bit more. And then we're gonna probably make this one a bit more of a chunkier tree. You want to kind of vary up your weights of the trees. So like this one here can be like a little bit bigger. Again, all I'm doing is just pushing and tapping and pushing that weight of the brush left to right, chunking it out, letting it just do all the work. I'm going to do the big tree over here now. And again, similar fashion, I'm just going to keep pushing outwards. And you can do it from the very, very center of the tree. You can do it from like out here. You know, just get your main branches in first and then work out where you want to thicken up, where you want to sort of slim things down. You can have trees that have very slim tops to them. They can, you know, get a little bit wider towards the bottom. They can have a few rogue branches that go a little bit further out. You know, it all looks fine. And then wiggle your pen along that base again because you want to just nicely have a big thick area here. Now, once I've done these trees, I'm going to go ahead and layer in some more as well, like in the gaps. I've got quite a few gaps here, and I want to make sure that, you know, it's quite a densely populated little forest area here. So yes, these trees are going to look a little bit smaller, but it's just, you know, now we're going to pack them in, get them nice and full, get some gaps filled in with some minor trees like that. And one thing I'm constantly looking for in my own work, I'm going to go down to 1% as I just draw in this extra little sort of tree trunks here, is I'm constantly looking to see if I'm like leaving really obvious parallel gaps. So I've just changed my brush size again to the one that we were using. I'm very it's very easily done for me, where I end up just adding in, you know, trees that are constantly separated by the same gap, and it looks so boring and it's not real. You know, you can have big densely populated areas like here. I'm just going to chuck in another tree very close to the other one, and that's fine. And then that gives me that variety between all of the different types of trees that we've now been adding into our land. And you can just get through here and just, you know, add in again a few more if you want to. So just, you know, sometimes maybe just the tree trunk is enough to show some density of tree. And then maybe like a little scatter of something along that edge. I'm going to go right to the edge of the frame over there and chunk that out a bit more. And that's it. That's all we need to do for our trees on this area of land. But we're not done with details. Of course, we've got a waterfall, etc. to add in. So we're going to go ahead and go to our colors. We're going to grab this color here, top of the second column from the right. I am going to create a separate layer just temporarily. So I'll create a new layer. I'm going to go ahead and set that size to the 1% mark, and I'll bring the opacity down to 50 just to get me started. And then I'm going to zoom in. Where I know my sort of waterfall is going to be, I can just sort of draw in the top of the water here, using the leatherwood still. And then from there, I can just go ahead and just run the water off. So I'm going to go down to like the smallest 1% I can go to now, all the way down, and just make sure you go all the way down past the bottom of your little land there. So this is going to start off a little bit faint as we do this, and then from there I could leave a gap in the waterfall, like here to that gap here, and then maybe I could make this bit quite wide with water, so I could go ahead and really add in some water here, all kind of flowing, of course, in a similar direction, so you don't end up with anything that looks a bit too confusing to look at. And there you go, you've got a very simple waterfall in the distance. We can then start to flush this out even more, and you can just bring that water right to the very edge of your shape if you want to. Now there we go, that looks a little bit nicer. Then I can set the brush size a bit bigger. I can just fill that out a little bit more if I want to add in some more tone. The most important thing you can do, of course, though, is go full opacity and then just layer in the top, layer in some lines in here. And there you go, there's your first waterfall done. And I say first because we can chuck in another one if we want to. Similar kind of height. Similar, I say. You could go a tad higher if you want to. And kind of just chuck this one like here. So let's bring that opacity down to 50 again. So you can just take your time. And then just creating like a curved hockey stick like shape almost. So that's your first bit of your kind of waterfall. Goes all the way down to the water as we said. That's a little bit larger, which is good because that's going to be a little bit closer towards us. And you can just make your own world here, to be honest. You can have like a few little kind of singular, almost, I would say, spouts of water almost. So like you could have the water here, you know, be 1, 2 little steps. You could add a third little one in here because the other one over there is 2 and they're quite wide. I'll probably add in like a third one, and I'll let this one kind of come across at a bit more of an angle. Maybe it comes from behind a rock, for example. And then that kind of just blends into that one as well. So there we go. There's my other waterfall. Simply done. And then if you go to your colors and you grab the middle of the second column from the right, you can then just start to flush that out a bit more with brighter tones. So I'm going to go to 100% opacity. I'm going to brighten up the top surface here of the water especially, because I think the light would catch on it and it would look really pretty like that. So we'll add in some brighter tone on here, followed by just a few little accent lines of slightly brighter water in here. There we go, just enough just to separate it a bit more. And then based off that logic, you could probably say, well, I'll add in just a tiny amount in here, and that's it, to be honest. You know, just a few little sort of taps of the whiter tone just to keep it nice and simple. Now from there, we've got some other details we can add in. I am going to go ahead, and this is all temporary, just in case I want to make some changes shortly. I'm going to create another new layer. Go to my colors, and I'm going to grab this sort of grayish tone here. It's the middle of the second column. And then if you bring your opacity down to 50% again, size, you could probably go to 1% or the tiniest size, either. Right next to your waterfall, ignore all these kind of color changes in here. I'm going to go down to the smallest size. You can start to just draw in some kind of almost like rock shapes here. So they want to kind of face a little bit in a similar direction to the waterfall itself, because the waterfall would have carved through the stone over the years. And so you can now just kind of show all of that kind of grooving in here. So it's just as simple as some diagonal lines across the screen in towards your waterfall. Don't go all the way towards it. You could probably, in the distance here, add in some more. In fact, I could go up to 100% opacity as well, just to kind of really kind of show some rocky kind of details in that little bit down there. Just a little bit. It's not meant to be anything too intense. It's just a few little nods to say, yep, okay, cool. I understand that perhaps this forest is a little bit higher up. It's a little bit more raised based off the fact that we've got all this stonework going all the way down. I'm going to bring it down to 50% again and just randomly create like another kind of rocky shape here. I say rocky, it's just like a boomerang shape, isn't it? It's just there, a little bit of a wobble to it, just to add in some light on there. Maybe a little bit here too, a little bit on there. And you don't have to fill out the whole space. Just little bits here and there will look fantastic. And you can use the rock here that we're creating to also kind of mask the waterfall. So the waterfall comes from behind this little line here that I've now created. Kind of simplifies it a bit. And then if you go to your colors and you grab the bottom of the second column, same layer, we can just do it on. That's perfectly fine. I'm just going to go in like a sort of splashing outwards kind of fashion like this to create like a bit of a bush like shape, just give a nod to some greenery. So in fact, I'll bring the opacity down to like 30% just to create some really subtle bits of green. You can do it on top of some of those rocky edges if you want to. I'm not doing it everywhere. This is just like really, really, really sporadic. It's just, if I'm honest, when you do this type of thing, especially in here, you're mainly looking to kind of just fill the space. Like, is there anything that you can do here just to kind of give a nod to the kind of what is on this space? And that's it. Your brain will then understand, oh, it's a big grassy side. That's perfectly fine. And, you can leave it like that. So like a little bit of green, as simple as that. You could go even like, get into some really minor areas of like wiggle lines in a similar fashion, connect things together so you don't do too much. But it's just maybe saying, okay, cool, maybe this area over here, the lighting is just catching enough on these kind of little new bushes and growths that we've created, because they're potentially in the spot where that light's just going to come across and illuminate them a little bit. Now, what we'll then do is, if you're happy, your best bet then is to pinch all three of those together. If you go to your colors and you grab the top of the third column again, keep that opacity nice and low of the leatherwood, about 33%. Just tone down maybe the top of your waterfall. That's what I need to do. I need to tone this down by just going over it a little bit. I'm going to go up to the 50% and just toning it down so it just looks like it gets brighter as it, of course, starts to fall. There we go. Got like a bit of a shadow on it, and then a bit of a shadow on that top edge as well, just to kind of disguise it a little bit. Likewise, you can then wiggle over the top of your bushes, especially if you've added in a large amount of the green. You can chuck some shadow in there over the top and just break those kind of consistent green tones down a little bit. Run over the top of your rock as well. Just go all over the place. Just tone things down if and where is necessary. Let's add some mist to this. So let's go ahead and create a new layer. Let's then go ahead and go to our colors and grab the middle of the second column from the right. Brush wants to be set back to airbrushing and the soft brush. Size, I'm going to set it initially to about sort of 3 to 4% because I want to wiggle along the base here. So I'm going to go down to about 2, in fact. No, let's go 3. Let's go in that happy medium of 3. Really light with my pressure. I'm going to wiggle my way all the way along kind of the base of the land and then wiggle my pen just above it ever so slightly just to kind of break that up. I'll add in some little bits of mist along the base of the waterfalls as well, because they would create water vapor. And then 4%, let's go ahead and then just wiggle our pen sort of in through that space, a little bit up towards the top. And again, if you can find like a little gap that you think would look great, like to bring some mist through, you can go ahead and just really chunk it out by adding in a good chunk of mist in there and let that kind of just trickle in from wherever you think would look really cool, like a little something like that. And again, you can add more detail by going back to, which one was it? Elements and clouds. Get that opacity to 40%, size. Let's go to 11. Let's give it a light scatter along those little edges of some of those shapes that we just created, and maybe even go smaller than that, like 6%. And then again, just tone out some of those trees, give some taps into some of the trees up towards the top. Try and tone them down a little bit. Take out a few shades of the color at the bottom here, give it some shaping to some of the mist at the bottom. But as long as you've got like a nice soft line towards the bottom, about 2% now with my brush size, you should be able to then nicely kind of just feather this into what will be the water below. So just a little bit of a line across the bottom edge there, softening that up, especially over towards the edge of the land there. That'll look really nice. And in a minute, your reflection, when you get the white involved here along the base, will look really effective. So I'm going to go for a little something like that. And then of course we need to reflect it. So we'll go ahead and we'll pinch the two layers together, your mist and your actual land, swipe it to the left and duplicate it. The bottom one out the two, tap on its opacity and just bring it down to 50%. Go to your cursor, zoom out a little bit and flip it vertically, not horizontally. Drag it down, join up the edge of the land, and you end up with a lovely reflection. You could probably use freeform and just squish that down ever so slightly. We are going to blur this as well in a minute, so don't worry about some of the details. So I'm just going to squish it down ever so slightly, and then tap on my cursor when I'm done. I'm going to go to my adjustments, going to go to Gaussian blur. Now swipe from left to right. We'll give it a nice, how much do we want to give this? Maybe 5%. 5 looks pretty good. We still end up with some shape. 5 or 6% looks really good. So go to 5 or 6, tap on your adjustments when you're done. And just like before, go to the layer, tap on it and add the drawing assist. Go to your smudge tool and then start smudging the edge of it. Again, you want to what you're doing now is, because this isn't necessarily attached to the background, if you push in from here, you're just basically almost like erasing. So I can erase through that reflection, get rid of a little bit of it, and also just chop it up. Break it down all the way into the corner. Get rid of a lot of it if you can, just take your time, maybe even fluctuate your brush size like a 1 to 2% just to get some variety in the shapes. But again, you should end up with a lovely little reflection over there. Now, if that starts to look a little bit too sort of contrasty, perhaps you could always go ahead and create a new layer again in front of the land there, tap on it and clipping mask it to the land. And go to your color and triple check it's the middle of the second column from the right. Brush, go back to airbrushing in the soft brush and airbrushing, and then just sort of fade out the bottom a little bit if you need to, like a 9%. Just lighten up the very, very bottom of it. It might start to create a bit more of a nice blend between the contrasts. Anyway, let's move on. We've got another piece of land at the foreground to create, so we're going to create a new layer. While you're here, you could swipe from left to right on those 3 layers for that area now and group it together and just call it left side. Collapse that down and then go to the new layer, go to your colors and grab the top of the second column. Brush wants to go back to the option again of leatherwood, so we want to be in artistic and leatherwood. We'll go 100% opacity. Size, we'll keep it down to 1% just to start with. Now we're going to work in a piece of land again, and that's going to roughly work out around about, say, here. So I'm going to draw in like a little marker and then draw in a straight line across. That gives me my kind of guide at least. And then from there, I'm going to go ahead and just kind of chunk that out a little bit, like the top edge. I'll go a bit bigger with the brush size, like 1%. Keep my pressure nice and light just to start with. And then we'll rough up the bottom edge as well, so it's not too sort of straight and boring, like across that edge. You can add in some like bits of land that protrude into the water. There we go, a little bit across there. Lovely. And then from there, we can just make that a little bit more of a bank. So I'm going to start up here. And then I want to also make sure I create bumps and lumps in this all the way down towards the water's edge. And then I can tap and let go and drag and drop the color in. Nope, we can't because there's no gap. There's still gap, should I say. We'll try again. There we go. And again, just kind of fill out the whole thing. Get some of these different tones of this brush in here as well. That will look really nice. And you should end up with a bit of land like this. Now we're going to add in just like 2 trees to this. So I'm going to change the brush. I'm going to go to inking. And I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to use this studio pen, and we're going to keep the size around about 8% maximum opacity. I'm going to draw in sort of the main trunks of the trees, and they're going to be fairly tall ones. They're going to go all the way up to like here. I'm going to press a little bit firmer towards the bottom and just pop one finger on the screen to make sure it's a nice straight line. And then again, I think we'll put another one just roughly around about, say, here, nice and light, and then heavier towards the bottom with your pressure. And you can go down it again if you need to, and again, heavier towards the bottom, and maybe just lean it outwards slightly just to chunk up the base. Now what we're then going to do is just create little flick offs for some branches. Now if you go to your studio pen, you'll see under my stabilization here that I've got maximum matte streamline, and I've also got 50% stabilization as well. So now what I can do is I can just go ahead and just create little kind of flick offs here up and down the tree, just to create some kind of branches, and they can be pointed down, they can be pointed like outwards, you know, they can be all over the place. You can add ones that kind of flow like a little bit more horizontal towards the top. You tend to see that the branches would start to kind of almost point upwards. The weight of the branches towards the bottom would start to, you know, bring that tree down a little bit. And I've not gone all the way to the very top. That's not necessary. And these, to be honest with you, are not necessary either. But it's just in case we get like a view and we can just see through, we can just see some branches and we can just chuck some color on them in a minute with the leatherwood. You can see occasionally I'll add in like a little bit of lining on here just to add in some branches up and down the tree. Let's then go back to our brush. Now let's go to artistic and the leatherwood. Size probably 2% and maximum opacity, because you can just sort of tap and push. Now 2% might be too big. Let's go to that 1%. Lots of pressure and just kind of push. Now, to be honest, I think I did do 2% in my pre-practices, but it just feels a bit unnatural at the minute. But just a few, there we go. Just like a little dash and push outwards along those kind of lines that you created. And you know, you can make your tree nice and skinny. You can make it nice and small. It's totally up to you. Leave gaps, of course. There we go. This is looking nicer now. The size is correct. It's 2%. And then as you get towards the top in a minute, you may just want to kind of think about just using a smaller, like 1%, to create some much needed like little details up the tree. And you can always do a combination of the two. So you can use the 1% afterwards on top of the 2 just to push out little scatters of the brush to add in more detail perhaps to the tree itself. So you can add in like little flick offs down towards the bottom here. There we go. And I'm going to leave this tree a little bit skinnier because I want it to be a little bit more unique compared to the ones in the background. Again, 2%, we'll do exactly the same. Just a light push outwards from here, like little taps and pushes off towards the edge. Little taps and pushes. I'm not going to go all the way to the top with this brush because it's a little bit, or this size should I say, it's a little bit too chunky. Come all the way down towards the bottom. I'm going to leave a little bit of a gap. I don't want there to be too much connecting it to the ground in this particular instance. The ones in the distance is a bit different because you're trying to create just a generalized silhouette, whereas here I'm trying to show you the tree and we've got more detail to play with because it's closer towards us. So hence why I'm now going back in with the 1% just to create some more flick offs here and there, just define a few of those kind of blob-like shapes almost with some more purposeful branches. And you know, occasionally just let one rip all the way over to here and let the tree get a little bit wider with its kind of flaring out of its branches. Now what we're then going to go ahead and do is we're going to go to our brush and change it to airbrushing in the soft brush. Size wants to be around about 3 or 4%. I'm just going to triple check we are still on the same layer. We just want to very lightly, just behind this tree, really, really lightly, just kind of feather out that top edge and just kind of break down this kind of sort of shape almost, like, you know, so it's a bit kind of, there's a little bit of light trickling through, maybe there's not, and I can go a bit smaller than that, like a 2%, and just maybe define it a bit more. That's just to soften it up and kind of give us a bit of a breakdown. We don't need to see everything. Then what we're going to do is we're going to go to our layers and create a new layer. We're going to go to our colors and grab the bottom of the second column. We're then going to go to our brushes and we're going to find organic and the rainforest brush. If you tap on the rainforest brush, the only thing I've changed is if you go to stroke path, you can see the spacing is now 47% and then hit done. When you're done, of course, with today's tutorial, swipe it to the left and reset it. Let's bring the opacity down to around about 70%, size around about 1. We're going to create some bushes and grass and etc. down here. So where you've got your little sort of clusters of green, you can start to sort of chunk them out now and create bushes. So create all the green of them. So I'm going to create a lovely green one over there, right on the edge, because that's where the lighting is coming across. I will then probably bring the opacity up to, let's bring it down, sorry, let's go to 85%. I'm going to create like another little bush-like shape here. Little dark spots in between will look fantastic. You've got another little bush there. I'm going to make sure that kind of the base of this tree has like a bit more green to it, like a little something like that. I'll add in a bit more here, and you can just chunk out the green and add in more if you need to. And then also, don't be afraid to go along kind of the shore-ish area and just add in like little taps of it, just to add in some green sort of grounding almost. And then down to 70% again, and just very lightly, one brush stroke if possible, just add in some ground in here. And then I don't think I want to add in too many bushes because I don't want the lighting to be too much and too like covered over the whole space. So a little something like this should do the trick. Now we are going to go ahead and create another new layer. We'll change the blend mode from normal to add, but we're going to bring the opacity right down, bring it down to like 25%. And then same settings as before, except now you can just get into here. I'm going to go down to a smaller 1%, and I'm going to go maximum opacity, and I'm going to go a bit bigger than that brush size. I want to just dash in some slightly lighter patches of green just towards this left-hand side where the light from that kind of sunrise is just catching on our little land here, brightening up the ground. A couple of little specks on here. That's okay, but just a little bit of greenery will look really nice. Now from there, we're going to go ahead and create another new layer. We'll go to our brush. We're going to go back into inking, and we're actually going to go back to the studio pen. We're going to go to our colors and grab the top of the second column. Maximum opacity size, 8%, that's fine. We're going to draw in front of here now, and in front of your land. So what you can do is you can just draw in like big blocky kind of shapes for some rocks along this edge. So for instance, I've just drawn in a block there that you can see, but to make it a little bit easier to see, I'm going to sort of start like a bit more in the water, maybe slightly a bit smaller with 5% as the brush size. And then just drawing in some like rocky kind of shapes right here in our shore. And you can, the best thing sometimes to do is just draw in the rocks first and then connect them together where you feel is necessary. So I'll draw in like a rock here. I'm going to draw in like a very distant rock here that's just like slightly separated, and maybe a small one off from there. Maybe another one like here. Try and vary the sizes, but just like a few little scattered ones there. I do want them to have some nice rocky edge to it though, so I'll connect it together and somewhat tidy up the edge there. So I'll make that a bit bigger again. Here I've got quite a large space, so what I'll do is I think I'm just going to draw in like a quite large kind of flat plane of rock almost, and then drag and drop my color in. I can connect them together with like small boulder like shapes if I need to, just to connect everything together. Another one there too. And over here on the right, you could just draw in like, again, like one big one if you really wanted to, all the way on that left-hand side. There we go, big blocks along that edge. And again, feel free to then draw in like another one that's like here in the water. Don't worry about the shape all the time, you know, just get back in there and tidy it up after if you feel it's necessary. There we go, little kind of little additions to our little ground over here. Let's then create a new layer in front of that and tap on it and clipping mask it. Go to your colors, grab the middle of the second column, and I'm going to bring the opacity down to 50%, same brush. All we're going to do is we're going to brighten up the side that's facing that light source. So the light source is going boom across. So all of these rocks where you can see the shapes now, you can just sort of one brush stroke if possible, just kind of brighten up the top surface of them and then go back over it again if you want to, just to emphasize little additional details in the rock. But something like that, just when you zoom all the way out, you get the idea that it's like a stone material instead. So again, I'm looking for where I added in all those blocks, top surface, just adding in something, and then maybe a couple of additional slightly lighter strokes. The smaller ones here, you can just add in like a little sort of like a little bit of lighting just towards that top edge, almost like just a little bit of an outline almost towards that top side. You don't have to add it in on every single rock, but you can if you want to. I mean, I think I'll probably end up doing the majority because we are going to add in some more that are a little bit brighter in a minute. So all I'm doing is just adding in like scribbly kind of lines over the top surface of it. And when you zoom all the way out, it doesn't matter anymore because the detail gets like compressed. Now you can go ahead then and set the opacity to 100%, and you could go over the top of like some of the edges that face that light source the most. So like here, I could definitely add in on like this big large one here. It'll also somewhat help separate it from the landing behind, but a lot of the really small ones, you don't really need to. Could probably add in a little something on this guy, maybe a streak running across the top edge of that one too. Now that's your land over there done with. You can then go ahead and swipe from left to right on all of those layers. You can group them together. You could even tap on the group and flatten it if you want to, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and hold down on the tick, turns off everything, and turn off your background color. Then tap away, Swipe down with 3 fingers and go to copy all. And then we'll go back to our layers. We'll hold down on the tick, bring it back in, turn on your background color just in case. And then we'll go ahead and tap, swipe down with 3 fingers to go to paste. We'll flip this vertically. We'll move it down to the edge of the land is touching on those little kind of rocks and stuff. And then grab the option of freeform and just flatten it down a smidge, tidy it up again. Don't worry about your rocks. It's more the edge of the land I want to tidy up, and then tap on your cursor when you're done. And just like before, we will go to our adjustments and gauge and blur. We'll swipe this from left to right. We don't want to do a massive amount, but I think around about 3 to 4% looks really good. Then tap away. Bring that underneath your group for your right hand side, a little bit of land there, so your stones sit on the top. And then what you can do is you can create another new layer, go to your colors and grab the top of the second column from the right. And using your brush as a studio pen, maybe bring your opacity down to 50%. What you can do is you can just kind of create like wrapped lines almost around the edge of some of those shapes. So creating like where you've got like a rock, you can just create like little sort of ripple lines there around them, and it will just help them kind of stand off. Over here, it doesn't really matter too much. In fact, we're probably going to erase some of that anyway. But just a few little kind of ripples along the edge of those kind of stones will really help them. It helps you as well understand that they are on top of the surface. They are not below. So just a few little lines like this. Then we want to go ahead and go back down to the reflection, tap on it. You want to bring it down. I think I brought mine down to around about 75% in my pre-practices. I'm going to go to my smudge tool, tap on my smudge tool. Again, it should be wash and 100% opacity, size about 1 to 2%. And we're going to push it left to right, just in the same way we've done before, which means we have to tap on this layer and add the drawing assist. Push it left to right, break it down, especially right down here where the reflection starts to travel quite a lot. You can just really kind of get rid of quite a bit in there. Push it left to right. Don't forget, break down the shape in general. But don't be afraid also, this will look really good. Start like here and just push that shadow across all the way. And that should just then tidy up a little bit those edges, to be honest with you, without having to actually do anything. So I'm pushing all the way through the tree at some point here, just to kind of really break that up, give myself some lovely reflections. And then from there, we're going to move into the foreground. So that's all of your right side done. Again, you can swipe from left to right, group it all together, rename the group and call it right. We'll collapse that group down. I'm going to create a new layer, go to my colors and grab top left of the palette. Brush wants to stay with the studio pen probably, and let's go maximum opacity. Size can be around about 5%. First thing I want you to do is just draw in like a big rock, like kind of boulderish shape here. Draw a rock and drag and drop the color in. And then from there, just let the land run just past the halfway point. So let's go down to like here, and you want to kind of run your grassy ground up under that rock. And then from there, kind of just create like a bit running off the back. Now I've got you to draw the rock in because I want you to know what you're seeing. I want you to know what your rock looks like. So then you drag and drop the color in. You know this is your rock and you can kind of remember the shape of it, and that'll be useful in a minute. Then what we'll do is we'll go ahead and we'll actually put it on a separate layer just so it's nice and tidy. We'll create a separate layer and we're going to draw in some rocks in the water here. So just start off by creating just random like sort of square and all sorts of different shapes in here. Connect them, make sure the bottom's somewhat flat, and you'll end up with one rock. You can create another one. Leave gaps in between though. It will make life a lot easier when we come to do the reflections in a minute. So make sure you've got some good solid spacing between them. Now, I say that, I can chuck in a rock here that sort of makes its way out and into the water from behind our land, but because it's on a separate layer, it won't interfere later on. So I can have a rock sticking out here, I can have another little kind of smaller one here. That was something very simple kind of shaping. Maybe we create like one that looks a little bit different here. Drag and drop the color into that one. And that all looks pretty cool. Quite happy with that. Let's just emphasize the scale of this one a tiny bit more, making it a little bit larger. Lovely. And there we go. We've got some nice little details that we can probably fill in shortly, but let's actually just do one more. And again, I'm just trying to make sure I leave a gap. The smaller ones sometimes are the ones to me that just really help fill out a scene. Like it just creates a full story almost. I'll get rid of that last one. That's okay. That works for me. Now from there, we're going to go back down to the main shape that we created. we're going to just draw on that layer. So we'll go to our colors. We're going to grab the bottom of the first column. Your brush then wants to go into the option of, it was under charcoals and the carbon stick. Now size, let's get that to about 2%. And I want you just to kind of just wiggle in some green area, like here behind this rock. You can go a tiny bit higher than the shape there. And don't go like too close to your rock though. Of course, you want to keep that separated. So I'm going to go all the way to the edge. Keep your pressure varied as well, so you can add in bright patches, light patches, and everything in between. I'll do like a little wiggle of color down here too. And I'm going to add in some green along here, just down the edge, keeping my pressure as light as possible, so then I can just build up the color and get back in there if I want to. So a little bit more green there, and that's it. That's all we're going to add in this space. We're then going to go to our smudge tool. Tap on your smudge tool. You want to change this now to the option of inking, and we can use the studio pen. We could always use dry ink as well. We can even use ink bleed, and that is exactly what we're going to do. We can use the ink bleed brush, maximum opacity, and size set to about 11%. And we can just start smudging this all out now and creating blades of grass. So I can grab all the different tones in here. So there's like dark tones on the very edge there that you can see, and then there's the greens, and just make your way down the image. So that's really important. You want to, let's fluctuate the size. Let's go down to 4% as well, a little bit further back, so we can get some thinner blades in here. And just look how quick and easy I'm doing it. I'm not thinking about it too much. It's just grass, isn't it? So I'm just trying to do the very edge of the shape first. Add in some that go like a little bit of a diagonal line as well. That would look really nice. Get rid of that kind of purposeful edge that we created with the script brush. There we go. And then again, you're looking to kind of sort of add tones on top of tones. So I can push these greens up, but then I can also push the dark tones here up and on top of the greens. So here I can sprout out some of the greens, the dark tones on top of those greens. It creates depth. Then I can run the green back over the dark tone that I just did, and just keep smudging them all together. And again, down here, let's maybe bring that brush size back up to like 13%. We can then push the darkest tones over the top of those greens and just all over the place, just random scattering of just grass. When you zoom all the way out, it'll look lovely and feathered. So again, a few more greens over here, just breaking that up. Be quick with it, don't overthink it, just da-da-da-da-da. But again, you're kind of, your best way to do this most of the time is to make your way down. So you can bring the color from below on top of the color above. And then that way you can get some lovely layering of different tones. Just keep on going. And then I can be a bit more brave and really start to bring up a lot of the dark tone here, just to break up that general shape anyway. There we go. And it's something you can always come back to in a second. That looks really nice though, like that. And again, we do exactly the same over here. So we're just going to go all the way down towards the sort of water's edge. And then once I've done kind of one layer of angle, I will just keep going in here. I'm not going to tuck too much underneath that rock. I want that rock to have a little bit of separation to it. And this is why we didn't add in too much of the green, because we need those dark tones to come like near from behind it and take over and layer in behind. It's not a problem if you've added in a lot. You could always use your eraser. And then from here now, I'm smudging out and I'm pushing out all the green and pushing the dark tone all the way over the top of it. Okay, that lovely staggered grassy effect. Let's then add in some color to the rocks. Now, we could probably do this on the same layer, but just be careful. So we're going to go to our colors and grab the middle of the first column. Brush still wants to be carbon stick. I've got 2% brush size. I'm going to bring the opacity down to 70% just to get me started, because I'm going to go ahead and run some basic blue over the top. Now, what we need to do is we actually need to go ahead and undo that and tap on the layer and alpha lock it, because we want to add color all the way to the edge. So if it's locked now to just whatever we've drawn already, I don't have to worry that that lighting is going to stay within the boundary of the shape. So I'm just layering in some blue on that top edge, maybe a smidge of light tone just towards the rear, but that's it. And then probably go a bit smaller, like a 1%, maybe a bit higher with the opacity, and just maybe add in some, like with my brush pointing down a little bit more, like just some interesting kind of shaping to the stone itself. There we go, you can see that lovely lighting coming across. And if you've got a little bit of void space, I urge you to set your brush size opacity to about 70%. Draw in like another kind of rock-like shape. Take your time to kind of build one up though. Don't add it in too quickly. Like, you know, just draw in like a bit of a shape in here. Again, little kind of lines running across that shape of it. And you should be able to bury another little stone in the ground there. So that's looking really smart, but we can just add in a little bit more lighting to that. So we could go ahead and create a new layer, tap on the blend mode for that layer and change it to add, and tap on the layer and clipping mask it. And then get into here and then just maybe brighten up that top edge, or find some edges of the rock that you feel like, yeah, that would get a little bit more love from that morning sunshine and reveal the full color of it. Just like a little something like this. Leave that one down there, that's fine. So what we'll do is we'll pinch those together, and then we'll carry on that same effect with the stones. So we're going to go ahead and I'll tap on them and alpha lock them. So I can't paint outside of the stones. And I've got a size, what's that still set to? 1%, opacity 70. And again, it's just similar fashion, just add in some very quick and easy lighting to the very top edge, and then anything that trickles around the edge, just add in a little splash of it. This brush is fantastic for this, so you don't even really need to worry about it. Little splashes of blue, a little bit around the side here, and then maybe that comes across and down a little bit, just to kind of change that up, make it look like it definitely is a flatter object, but we've got a big peak there. And if you want to, you can do the add layer as well. So you can create a new layer, tap on it, clipping mask it, and change the blend mode from normal to add. And then just again, get in here and just ever so slightly on that top edge on some of the rock, add in little splashes of light. This side here would get some light because it would come across, and then maybe this one here gets a little bit come across onto there. Just going to add in a bit more on this one, brighten up that top edge. Lovely. And then from there, we'll pinch those together. Now, I mentioned earlier, we do need to do some reflection. So what we'll do is we'll swipe it to the left and duplicate it. We'll grab the bottom one out of the tool, tap on it and turn off the alpha lock. We'll go to our cursor and we will flip it vertically. And we want to align, first of all, the big rock on the left. So this rock over here, I'm going to align it so I'm happy with it, something like that. Tap on my cursor when I'm done. If you see like a little bit of excess, just make it its way up. Just tap on your eraser and use something like airbrushing in the soft brush. 1 to 2%, just get rid of that. Then I need to go to my selection tool and turn off color fill. You then want to go ahead and just start grabbing shapes. So for instance, I'm going to use freehand, not rectangle. So go back to selection tool and freehand. I'll draw around here and tap on the dot. I'll grab my cursor. I'll move this individually down. I'll zoom in and I'll just tuck it under there. Tap on my cursor when I'm done. Then I'll grab my next one. Grab the long shape. Tap on the cursor. Grab your transform tool cursor and then move it all the way down like so, and then tap on your cursor when you're done. Just triple check that the reflection, at least, and the rocks, to be fair, are underneath your main bit of land here at the bottom. So your main bit of land needs to be at the front. So my stones are now underneath. So again, going back to my reflection layer, I just need to continue grabbing individual rocks. That's why we gave ourselves enough shape in between and space, shall I say, and then just keep grabbing each last one till you get all the way underneath them. Last one. Move that underneath like so. And there we go, we've got your reflections, but of course we want to go ahead and make them look a bit more reflection-like. So let's go to our layer. We will tap on our adjustments and go to Gaussian blur. Let's blend from left to right so it matches up with the rest of the theming. I reckon around about 3% Gaussian blur. Now the only thing we're going to do differently with this one, if we tap on our layer and tap on it and add the drawing assist, when we go to our smudge tool, we are not going to use the smudge of the wash brush. Now we're going to use the ink bleed brush. I'm going to set my size to about 4%. I'm going to zoom in on some of these stones and again just push out and then push in. And this time these will look really sharp. So they'll end up with like really lovely crisp details in here, which will look lovely this close towards us. The wash looks fantastic a bit further back, but when you're this close, you want to be able to see detail. You don't want to lose it too much. So yes, we've got the blur, which just kind of breaks up that general sort of shaping, but to have these lovely sharp lines look great, and you can push them out a little bit more. You can bring them in, everything you can think of just to add in that lovely reflection in the water. Look how nice that looks. And we've got a lovely scene that's come together. Now, one thing I start to do at the minute, if I just go up to my actions, let's turn off our drawing guide so we can see our full scene, is I tend to also now add in some vignetting. Now, you can leave it like this, but what you want to do is go right to the top of your layers and create a new layer. Go to your colors and grab the darkest tone of your design, which is top left of the palette. Go back to your brush and go to airbrushing in the soft brush. And then I like to just, find a size about sort of 16%. And then I'll start to kind of vignette a little bit, and maybe a bit bigger than that. Let's go up to 25% almost. A little bit of a dark tone just down in the edges, a little bit of a darker tone over here. And just trying to somewhat just kind of just say, no, I want you to look at this middle bit. I want you to get to drawn into the distance. Could add in a little bit running up the side, a little bit at the bottom, maybe a tiny bit up into the corners, ever so slightly, just for drama. I mean, you can turn it on and off. You can see the difference. Like if I turn it on and off, you can see that just hopefully focuses your attention a bit more towards that center. There's little bits like here where I probably darken them up a bit more because they're probably creating like dark shadows in the morning anyway. But I think it adds a little bit more drama to it, as I say. So I'm going to pinch with 2 fingers, go full screen before. I hope you've enjoyed today's design. As I said, make sure to tag me in your finished creations wherever you decide to share them. Subscribe to the channel for weekly Procreate tutorials, and check out my Patreon because that's where I post additional tutorials every single month. And the catalogue now is over 150 exclusive tutorials that are not available here on YouTube. They're only available on my Patreon. I hope you had fun. Again, I'll see you in the next one.